Tonight, I want to begin with the word hubris. It's the word I focused on this morning in my daily newsletter on words that I send out from my Oswords website every day. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the word hubris, I should explain hubris comes from a Greek source word. In fact, it is a Greek word, to be honest, from the classical culture of ancient Greece. The word hubris is only recorded in English from 1885, but well before that, it was a bit of academic slang from ancient Greek used by all the classical scholars. Now, in that ancient world of Greek mythology and all those ancient gods and the Greek pantheon, hubris came to be meaning overweening presumption that led a person to disregard the will of the gods on Olympus. You don't want to do that. But the word hubris is still being used today, used figuratively. And here's the definition. This comes from the Great American Dictionary, the Merriam-Webster. Hubris means overweening pride or self-confidence and arrogance. And that's what Anthony Albanese is displaying every time he refuses to hold a federal, national, royal commission into the Bondi terrorist attack. Now, it's not the gods of the ancient Greek mythology he's defying in his arrogance. It's us. It's the will of the Australian people. He knows that not only the victims, not only the Jewish community, but pretty much the whole of the wider Australian community is clamouring for a proper national royal commission. But in his hubris, his overweening pride and self-confidence, his arrogance, he claims he knows better than everyone else. So no, we're all wrong. And we don't need to be bothered by a federal royal commission. The great Austrian-British philosopher Sir Karl Popper, in his classic book, The Open Society and Its Enemies, said, quote, "The test of a democracy is how responsive a government is to its people in between elections." Well, don't you think Anthony Albanese has just failed that test? I mean, he knows 2026 is not an election year, so he decided, in his arrogance, to ignore the demos, the people, and tell us we're all stupid. We don't know what we're calling for. He knows better than all of us. He really does seem to hold the people of Australia in complete contempt. He keeps bleating on about setting up the Richardson Review into federal agencies. But he knows that what we, the people, want is an investigation not just into federal agencies, but into the federal government. This Prime Minister, this trembling, terrified, bumbling bureaucrat who talks like an inter-office memo, this Prime Minister is so arrogant, he refuses to allow his own decisions, his own actions to be reviewed or investigated by anybody. Certainly not by Dennis Richardson, whose terms of reference Albanese spelled out yesterday. And in doing so, he made it clear that his policies, his actions, his decisions are not up for investigation or discussion or debate. End of that. He's just above all of that. Now, I ask you, does that look like overweening pride and arrogance? Does that look to you like hubris? You can see, can't you, why I chose the word hubris to label Albanese's performance at yesterday's press conference and really again today, this morning at today's press conference. So how does he think he'll get away with it? I can tell you how. He thinks we'll forget about it. Anthony Albanese thinks all this stuff about holding a National Royal Commission is just a 9-day wonder. And the holidays will intervene, and then by the time we're all back at our desks at the end of January, all this nonsense will have slipped from our minds. That's what he really thinks. He believes that if he just goes on stonewalling and blocking and digging his heels in for long enough, federal politics will get back to normal, in inverted commas, and he will have got away with it. He holds you in such contempt, he really thinks you will have forgotten about the worst terrorist attack ever on Australian soil. He thinks you will have forgotten that he sat at his desk for 2 years and did pretty much nothing about the vicious Jew hatred that flooded our streets and firebombed synagogues. He thinks you'll forget that he jetted off around the world while Jew-hating slogans that incited violence were chanted on Australian streets. He certainly thinks that his failures are way above being investigated or reviewed in a way that might be open to us the rabble, us the great unwashed, us the Australian mob. He thinks he is so far above us, he's not answerable to us. Anthony Albanese is inflicted with, I think, the worst case of hubris ever seen in Australian politics. So, will he get away with it? Well, remember that hubris is overweening pride. That's the definition, remember? And according to the old proverb, what does pride come before? It comes before a fall. So the next time the Prime Minister holds a news conference to parade his arrogant refusal to submit himself and his government to a National Royal Commission, listen very carefully. And I think you'll hear quietly in the background the sound of shovels shifting dirt as he digs his own political grave.